Good afternoon and welcome to an episode of All In with Nate. I am, as you know, this is the week of the draft. We get it over with, finally. But we are gonna do pick 17 through 21 today. The next two shows is gonna be a complete. We're gonna do the playoff contenders tomorrow, and we're gonna do the Atlanta Falcons on Wednesday. So if you got anything to say about the Falcons, Falcon fans is watching, chime in on Wednesday. And then, of course, Thursday, you'll see me on here for the live draft. And Friday, you'll see me on here for the second and third round. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about these teams that are on the board currently. We're going through 17 to 21. We're now getting to the teams that was either on the brink of making the playoffs or they made the postseason and lost first round. But the first team we're going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we do, let's get a quick preview of the Bengals. Up first, the Cincinnati Bengals. Coming in at number 17, this was one of the league's high-power offenses in 2024. Joe Burrow had a MVP caliber campaign, throwing 43 touchdowns and only 9 picks, leading the league in passing with almost 5,000 yards passing. Ja'Marr Chase led the league in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. This was a top 5 offense. However, their defense was atrocious, and it cost them in the end. They ended up finishing 9-8 and just barely missed the playoffs. So they entered the 2025 season. They just re-signed both of their key caliber wide receivers, and they're coming into this season with a new defensive coordinator, only 6 draft picks. So the Bengals will look to upgrade that side of the football to all together to match what was a high-powered offense last year. So up next, we're going to talk about their top needs. We're going to talk about what the mocks are saying, and we're going to give our own take on the Cincinnati Bengals and see how they can take that step to be a contender in the AFC. Coming up, the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, to start on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were 9-8. They had a really good season. They were a high-powered offense, and that team had a tough seat. They could not stop anybody, though. They were a great offensive unit. If you had them in fantasy football, you loved the Bengals last season. So I know I had a couple of them. I won like 2 fantasy titles because of Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. But again, that side of the ball was not the problem. Their defense, it was atrocious. It cost them a lot of games. I can very well remember them losing the Ravens game because the defense didn't show up late in that game. But the Bengals coming into this situation with a couple of big needs. But the needs that I have listed, I'm going to put up on the board is the pass rush, defensive lineman, linebacker, corner, and a guard. My first need for a corner, is going to be pass rusher. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, and I'm going to pull their depth chart up as I talk about them, who are the defensive ends or even the pass rush in general for the Bengals that run a 4-3 defense? As you see, Trey Hendrickson is the elite key starter. But then you got Chris Jenkins, BJ Hill, Joseph Ossai. None of those guys are proven. Myles Murphy didn't even get a sack last season. He was a first-round pick. And they got to address that unit if they're going to do anything as far as competing with the elites in the AFC. So they're going to have a chance in this stacked draft class to really improve that position. That's the first thing for the Bengals. The next thing I put on there is defensive lineman. As you see, as I mentioned, BJ Hill, really not a good – he's not, to me, a legitimate starter on the defensive line. Or is Chris Jenkins Jr., who is a young guy. So they're basically unproven at that position. And in a deep defensive tackle draft, this is the time to go ahead and get you a defensive tackle. If I don't care if their whole draft is defense, you have to address that defensive tackle unit. Also, linebacker. Logan Wilson is an elite linebacker, as you all know. Jermaine Pratt he's a solid linebacker. I'm not gonna say he's elite, but he's not. But they lost Akeem Gaither-Davis this offseason. But this is a really good class for linebackers, and linebackers are not going to fly off the board in the first couple of days. So, day one, truthfully, it may just be Jihad Campbell to leave off the board at the linebacker position. But after that, when you look at the rest of the draft, there's going to definitely be a need of linebackers, and there's going to be a plethora in the second day or even in the third day. So it depends on where they're going to go at that spot. Corner, right now, when you look at the corner situation, yes, you got DJ Turner, you got Cam Taylor-Britt, you got Dax Hill, I thought it was a safety, but he's actually playing corner. Don't sleep on the Bengals taking a corner at this spot because, truthfully, there is no legitimate corner one on this team. They're all decent players. They could use a game changer in that secondary at corner. And last but not least, which really might be their number one need, is the guard position. So when you look at their line, they got Orlando Brown. They brought his veteran left tackle. Amarius Mills came in last season from Georgia. He was their first round pick. But when you look at the middle of their line, Ted Karras is not a bad center, but Cordell Verson and Cody Ford are not starting caliber guards. You need to get you some talent at that guard position in this draft. It is key for them to get talent at that guard position because it's going to be a stacked draft class of offensive linemen. So to me, I feel that they need to really address that spot at this point in the draft. Not in the first round, but at least in day 2, I would consider it if I was the Bengals. That's what I would truly consider. And that's just a look at their depth chart. But to give you guys an idea of what the mocks are saying, Walter Football has the Bengals taking Nick Amonowara. He's the safety from South Carolina. Yahoo Sports have the Bengals taking Derek Harmon. He's the defensive tackle from Oregon. CBS Sports, Mike Renner, Ryan Wilson, Garrett Padell, Pete Prisco all have them taking Michael Williams, the pass rusher from Georgia. Christian Paul has them taking Josh Conley Jr. He is the guard from Oregon. Josh Ayers has him taking Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. And Kyle Stackpole has him taking Derek Harmon as well, the defensive tackle from Oregon. So again, this will be big for the Bengals. They need to address their defense. They brought in Al Golden to make their defense better. So they're going to have to address it this draft. But that's all I have to say on the Bengals. I look forward to see what they're going to do on Thursday night. The next team I'm going to talk about are the Seattle Seahawks, who also went 10-7. They didn't make the playoffs. They missed the playoffs on a tie with the Los Angeles Rams to miss the postseason. But before I get into them, let's talk about the Seahawks. Up next, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks had a really good regular season. They finished 10-7, barely missing winning the division to the Rams. They had a couple of solid players who made the Pro Bowl, and Jackson Smith-Njigba had a breakout year. Leonard Williams was solid again. Devon Witherspoon was solid as well. However, they've had a weird offseason. They parted ways with longtime wide receiver DK Metcalf. They parted ways in a trade with Geno Smith. They parted ways with veteran Tyler Lockett and replaced them with DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp, and Sam Darnold. So they're still going to be in contention in the NFC West. However, they come into the draft with 10 picks, including 3 in the top 52 and 4 in the top 92. We will see what the Seahawks will do as far as addressing those key needs that could possibly put them in position to win the NFC West going forward. In the position whilst San Francisco rebuild is imminent and Arizona still trying to figure it out. Up next, we will talk about what the Seahawks' top needs are, what the box are projecting, and what can the Seahawks do to take that next step into being a NFC playoff contender. Up next, the Seattle Seahawks. As I mentioned, the Seattle Seahawks are in a very weird position. The Seahawks tied to end the season at 10-7, but they made moves. They cut Tyler Lockett. They traded DK Metcalf. They traded Geno Smith to go get Sam Darnold. So they had a weird spot that they addressed for Seattle. But, I mean, they still have some decent pieces there. Like, if they really have a good draft, then they can absolutely upgrade and be a possible NFC West contender. Because, I mean, I don't think San Francisco is going to be as good this year. That's me personally speaking. I think the Cardinals and the Rams both are talented, but I don't think nobody is a set favorite in the NFC West. So my needs for the Seahawks are offensive line, wide receiver, cornerback, and linebacker. And as I get into this, I'm going to go bring up their depth chart. First thing first, offensive line. I want you to see the board as I talk about it. But as you see, they got Abraham Lucas and they have Charles Cross. Solid picks. They got both of them in. I think one of them came in 22, the other came in 23. They addressed that tackle spot. But when you look at the interior of their offensive line, Anthony Bradford, Satoa Lumela, and Oluwatimi are their interior linemen. None of those guys pose a threat when you need to make a play or you need to protect your veteran quarterback or protect for Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. You need to address that unit because the key to winning in this league is the offensive line. So this is a good draft for it. Their GM, John Schneider, even stated that this is their number one need going into the offseason. So do not be shocked if you see Seattle address this position with a couple of picks. They got 10, so do not be shocked if they address it with this spot. The second need sounds crazy, but it's a legitimate point. It's wide receiver. They got Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Cooper Kupp. This year, this is a really good receiving core. However, Cooper Kupp is 31. MVS is 30. Jackson Smith-Njigba is the only young receiver on this team. They need to get younger at this position. And when you look at who's backing them up, you got Steven Spims, you got River Carcraft. You have nobody backing them up that are talented wide receivers. So they have to address this spot. That is so key in this draft. So if they can find them a second round steal, go for it. But you need to get you a young receiver in this draft at some point that can be there long term with JSN. The next thing is the cornerback position. And I know the average Seahawks fan is going to say, why? Why are we going after a corner right now? But we'll speak on this. Josh Jobe, Rick Woolen, Devon Witherspoon. That's their young secondary. But Rick Woolen and Josh Jobe are also free agents after 2025. You still need to address adding depth to this position. It is so key to be able to do that at this point of the season. So you need to really consider possibly adding that position. So this is going to be key for Seattle. Seattle could really look at a corner, and I think with the 10 picks, they're definitely going to look at that spot. And linebacker is their other need. Look at their linebackers. They got Ernest Jones, Uchenna Nwosu, and Tyreek Knight. None of those linebackers jump off as wow, I got to block this guy, or he's going to create pressure, or he's going to be a problem, or anything to that effect. You have to look into this immediately, because when you look at the situation in Seattle secondary, they don't have a lot of young guys backing up that three. And who knows, Tariq Woolen could command a market. You got Josh Jobe who could be re-signed, but you never know. You got to just see what happens with the Seattle situation. But like I said, even with linebacker, they need to address this spot big time in the draft. That needs to be something that needs to be possibly even that could be potentially a day 2 thing. But I'm going to come back on the screen. That's the depth chart for Seattle to give you guys what the mocks are saying. For Seattle, Yahoo Sports and Walter Football has the Seahawks taking Gray Zabel. He is the offensive lineman from North Dakota State. He would be an instantly great fit for the Seahawks. CBS Sports, Prisco and Trapasso both have Kelvin Banks Jr. going to Seattle. That's the guard / tackle. They probably will plug him in at guard. Garrett Purdell has him going Matthew Golden, the elite wide receiver from Texas. Kyle Stackpole has him going Teddy McMillan, who would be a great duo with him and JSN. That would be awesome. Edwards has him going Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. Mike Renner has him going Jahdae Barron to address that need we were talking about. And Ryan Wilson has him going Nick Manawari, who is the safety from South Carolina. So all those kind of fit the needs they have. But this is the Seattle, my take on Seattle. We're going to move on to the next team on the board. The team that's won the NFC South the last 3 seasons is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But before we get into the Buccaneers, let's hit this quick preview. Up next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers saw a tale of 2 seasons. The first half was atrocious. They lost a couple of close games. They lost Mike Evans to injury. Chris Godwin went down for the season. And they started the season 4-6. It looked like the season was over until it wasn't. The Buccaneers rallied off their bye week, winning 6 of their next 7 games to win the division at 10-7 for the 3rd straight year. However, their season came to an end from rookie phenom Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders at home. Now the Buccaneers entered the 2025 draft with 6 total picks, but they also have made a couple of moves. They brought in Hassan Reddick, who is going through a lot with the New York Jets organization. So they made a couple of key moves. They brought back Chris Godwin. So the Bucs sort of have similar team from last season, but they do have a couple of needs to try to continue their winning streak in the NFC South. So now we'll discuss their top positions and needs, what the mocks are projecting, and what can the Bucs do to sustain their dominance on the NFC South. Up next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, as I mentioned, the Buccaneers. Now the Bucs are not in an awful spot, but I'm intrigued to see what the Bucs will do at this position at 19. I think I kind of know they're gonna go at 19, but they do have a couple of needs. They don't have a lot of major needs, but they do have a couple of needs. But before I go to the full screen to show the depth chart, their top needs are cornerback, edge rusher, linebacker. Now I will go to the full screen to the depth chart, and we'll look in depth and see why I said that. So at the corner spot, you got Jamel Dean. Tyke Smith is currently listed as the nickelback. However, they're saying he's going to probably move to safety. So that would be a great safety tandem with him and Antoine Winfield Jr. And then the outside is Zion McCollum. You don't really have a lot of proven guys at that spot. And also, the rest of the guys are potentially really inexperienced. So even if they don't address this need in the first round, this could be a day 2 instant need for the Buccaneers. So do not be shocked if you see that become a possible pick right there for the Buccaneers. So the next one is the next need I said that they have is edge rusher. So Hassan Reddick is brought in. He's the outside linebacker. They run a 3-4 defense, so he would be a blitzing linebacker. And Yaya Diaby is the other guy on the other side. Now, they don't have awful defensive ends, but I think that they possibly could address this. This could be like a premium pick. Why not get you a pass rusher in this deep class right now? Because I mean, you can't ask for better. So that's one thing. But also, you could very well say we're going to just skip that for now and then maybe address everything else. But with 6 picks in the draft, they could be kind of limited. So we'll see. I think they will eventually address getting a young pass rusher. They'd be crazy not to. But then we'll see. But the biggest need for the Buccaneers is linebacker. Lavonte Davis is in David. Excuse me, I said Davis. Lavonte David is entering his 12th season in the NFL. He is 35 years old. Outstanding linebacker. He's one of the elite guys that's played long time in this league. I don't know. He could be a future Hall of Famer. Who knows? But he's getting older. His backup is Deion Jones, serviceable guy. Falcon fans, I'm sure you remember him. He was our Pro Bowl linebacker during the young part of his career before injuries. On the opposite side, you got Servokea Dennis. You brought in the veteran Anthony Walker and the veteran Deion Jennings. None of those guys when you look at that linebacker group, jumps off the chart as we got to block him. He's going to be a problem. He's going to be the guy that we're going to have to deal with every game. None of those guys jump off as that. So linebacker could really be a huge spot right here. The Buccaneers have been mocked in a lot of folks, and we'll talk about what the mocks are saying in a few, but a lot of folks have they have Jahad Campbell as a potential Buccaneer right here, and I could very well see that pick happen. But we're going to see what the mocks are saying. I'm going to come onto the screen. This is the Bucs depth chart. But the mocks are saying Walter Football, Yahoo Sports, and 5 of the 7 CBS Sports pundits all have the Buccaneers taking Jahad Campbell at number 19 on draft night. Garrett Podell, Mike Renner and Josh Edwards have Nick Monterori being the Buccaneer pick. So those all kind of fit towards the needs of that I have listed below for the Buccaneers. But that is the Buccaneers, and we're going to move on to the Denver Broncos, who is the team that everyone didn't see coming last season. But before we get into the Broncos, let's look at the picks. Up next, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos entered the 2024 season with horrible expectations for most pundits. Did the Broncos match those expectations? Not a chance. Led by rookie quarterback Bo Nix, third season coach Sean Payton, and a high-powered defense, the Broncos hit everyone's expectations and made the playoffs as the 7th seed for the first time since their Super Bowl winning season in 2015. They ended up losing to the Buffalo Bills. However, that is a big sign in the right direction. And then Denver built off the great season they had, which saw Bo Nix be one of the best rookies in the league. Patrick Surtain finished as Defensive Player of the Year. The NFL's leading sack defense in the NFL by making 3 key signings. They signed Dre Greenlaw and Taloa Hufanga from San Francisco and Evan Ingram from Jacksonville. And now they're going to be a threat in the AFC West and in the AFC. But the Broncos entered the 2025 draft with 7 draft picks, including 6 third-rounders. Now let's see what the Broncos can do to upgrade going forward in the AFC. So we're going to discuss their top needs. We're going to discuss what the mocks are saying and how close are the Broncos to being a real threat in the AFC. Up next, the Denver Broncos. All right, as you see, they got 7 picks in the draft. But the Broncos are one of those teams that they're on the rise. The Bucs are going to be, the Bucs. The Broncos are going to be a problem in the AFC going forward. You got Sean Payton as the coach. You got Bo Nix in that quarterback room. You got an elite defense. That Broncos team is going to be fun to watch. And the Chiefs are still the favorite. However, the Broncos could give them some fits in the future in the AFC. But these are my needs for the Broncos right now: running back, tight end, defensive line, and cornerback. I'm gonna go to their depth chart and I will explain why. Now, let's go up to the running. Okay, well, the running back room is up there. Their starting running back is Jaleel McLaughlin. You got Audrey Estime, you got Tyler Body, and you got Blake Watson. They lost Javonte Williams in free agency. Not a single running back in their depth chart has ran for over 500 yards in their career in a season. They got to get a running back. And in a stacked class, you got multiple options that you can look at as far as getting a running back. So you could see a Marion Hampton or Ashton Genty if they possibly want to trade him, or if he just happens to drop. So they're going to get a running back in this draft of some sort. It may be at 20. Also, might be a shocking need, but really it may not be. Tight end at 20. You got Evan Ingram for 2 seasons, but if I'm the Broncos and I want to land me a young rookie contract tight end that could become elite, I'm looking at a Colston Loveland. I'm looking at I'm looking at a Tyler Warren. If I want to wait later in the draft, I look at a Mason Taylor, a Rondé Godson, one of the Texas tight ends, Terrence Ferguson, who's Bo Nix is real familiar with. So a tight end could be picked by the Broncos at some point in this draft for sure. Defensive line. Let me go to the defensive line real quick. Now, the defensive line is really good. You still got John Franklin Myers, who's the right side defensive end. They run a 3-4 scheme. Zach Allen is also a 3-4 in the 3-4. And then you got DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach as the other defense nickel tackles in the 3-4 scheme. But all of them are up for a contract in 2025. So I don't know who's going to be back in Denver. In this draft, this would be the perfect time to address, especially at defensive tackle. I don't think a whole bunch of defensive tackles are going to go off the board after possibly Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. They'll be on the board in the 20s. You could get to Walter Nolans and Deion Walkers, those guys later in the draft. You could get them in day 2 and day 3. So that could be a consideration for the Broncos. And last but not least is a corner. Pat Surtain, best corner in football, outstanding guy, defensive player of the year. He's the reigning defensive player of the year. But when you look at Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, those guys got picked on in that Broncos secondary. You need a solid cornerback 2 to pair up with Pat Surtain. You got solid safeties in Taloa Hufanga and Brandon Jones. So you now have to look into possibly getting a CB2. And this will be the perfect time if you are the Broncos to get you a CB2. So do not be surprised if you see them consider taking one in the second or later round. You could see a Darian Porter. You could see a Denzel Burke or somebody to that extent at that spot. But those are my needs for the Broncos. I'm going to come back on the screen. That's the depth chart for the Broncos. The mocks are saying this. Walter Football has been trading up to number 9 to take Ashton Jeanty. Yahoo Sports has them taking Mario Hampton. Ryan Wilson has taken Colston Loveland. Christian Paso has them taking Ashton Jeanty. 4 of the other pundits have them taking Mario Hampton. And Garrett Purdell ends off the mocks with them taking Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle from Michigan. So all of them have them kind of going with that need if you're the Broncos. But, we'll see what the Broncos are going to do in this draft. I'm looking forward to see what those guys do to build off of 2024 because I think they're going to be a contender in 2025. But last but not least, we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's another interesting team because they're not a bad team. They're not a great team, but they're a couple of pieces away from being a really solid team in the AFC. They always have winning seasons, but again, we'll get into them in a minute. Let's go to the preview, of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Up next, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have been a consistently winning ball club. They put together their 19th consecutive winning season, going 10-7, making the playoffs behind the NFL's highest paid defense. However, once again, Pittsburgh has yet to win a playoff game since 2016. Now they're in a weird position. They have an Asian defense. They don't have a quarterback. So the Steelers are in a very strange spot. However, they made some key moves this offseason. They sent their second-round pick off for DK Metcalf from Seattle. They picked up recent Super Bowl champion Darius Slay in a one-year deal. So the Steelers are going to look to upgrade and get younger and continue their consistency of having winning seasons and playoff appearances. But up next, we talk about the Steelers' top needs. We'll talk about how many picks they have remaining and what the mocks are saying. They currently have 6 picks and just 1 outside of the first round pick in the top 82. And what can the Steelers do to take that next step as far as being considered an AFC contender? Up next, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh man, the Steelers. Again, the Steelers are not a bad football team. They can definitely be considered as one of the solid teams in the AFC, but they're in a weird spot. They gotta hit a couple needs in this draft. Their first thing, so I'm gonna go to the needs first before I get into the depth chart. My needs for the Steelers are defensive tackle, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and defensive back. But let's go to the depth chart and see why I'm saying those 5 needs for the Steelers. Let's go down to the defensive side first. As you see, their defensive tackles. Well, Cam Hayward's considered a defensive tackle, but again, he's a veteran. He's similar to Levante David situation where he's getting up in age. You got Keanu Benton, Montravius Adams. You don't really have talent at that defensive tackle spot. They could absolutely upgrade that. They run a 3-4 under, so as you see, they could definitely upgrade that spot. They lost Ogunjobi to getting cut because of the cap situation. And then this is a deep draft for defensive tackle, so they can really consider that. Their owner, Art Rooney, even came out and stated that this is their number 1 need. So look for defensive tackle to be a Steeler before draft night is over. So that's going to be key for the Steelers. Running back, look at the running back room. They have Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, Cordero Patterson, that's an Arthur Smith guy, Jonathan Ward, Aaron Shampkin. You need a legit running back because with Najee Harris gone, you need a person that's going to give Jaylen Warren a split amount of carries or be your running back 1. And in this draft, there's a lot of talent at that spot. So they need to address a running back immediately. Maybe not in the first round, but second round, definitely look into it. Third round, because DK Metcalf was the second round pick that they traded. Next pick, wide receiver. You brought in DK Metcalf. Pickens potentially might get traded, whether it's draft night or before the season. I don't see him remaining, and even if he does, this is his final season as a Steeler. So look at the rest of the receivers. You got Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson. You don't have a lot of set wide receivers on this team. So this is going to be an interesting move right here. This could also be, depending on what happens with the next need, this could be the Steelers' first need of the night on draft night on Thursday. 4th need, quarterback. Now, Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson are their quarterbacks. Neither will be the quarterback coming week 1. They're in this weird spot. This could either be, if Shedeur drop, it could be Shedeur. Jackson Dart could be in the spot. Jalen Milroe could be in the spot. Or if they say, screw getting a fresh young quarterback this draft and wait till next draft, look at a potential trade for Kirk Cousins. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I can see it. Or look at free agent Aaron Rodgers for a 1 or 2 year deal to be a veteran guy to work with a pretty much solid unit in Pittsburgh. So we'll be watching these developments over the next couple of days with that spot. And last but not least is going to be cornerback. Joey Porter Jr. is outstanding. You got Darius Slay, solid veteran corner. Brandon Echols is the nickelback, but I mean, Brandon Echols is really not that. He's really not that solid as a nickelback. But the Steelers really looking into getting a corner at some point in this draft, or even a safety, because the safety opposite side of Mika Fitzpatrick is Deshaun Elliott, serviceable safety, not a starter. Miles Killebrew, same thing. So is Ryan Watts. You got to get you some young guys in there, or a young, really solid player at safety. I don't think a lot of safety is going to fly off the board in the first round. This could be a second or third round pick for the Steelers. Excuse me, I keep saying second round. They traded DK, so that wouldn't be a second round pick, a third round pick. But that's also, those are the needs that I have for Pittsburgh, and that's their depth chart. But as we get back into, excuse me, come on the screen. I'm sorry, but as I come back on the screen, the mocks have the Steelers Walter Football has them going Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. Yahoo Sports has them going Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama. CBS Sports, Prisco has them going Jackson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. Garrett Purdell has them going Amarian Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. Statpol has them going Luther Burden, the wide receiver from Mizzou, who's one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft. And I think he's going to end up with a contender. And the last but not least, Edwards, Renner, Trapasso, and Wilson all has to take in Shedeur Sanders, which would be a great fit for Pittsburgh, and that will energize that fan base out the gate. But I got one more thing I want to share. Shout out to my boy Brian Gordon, BG. Appreciate you, brother, for this. He made 2 mock drafts of his thought on the Steelers. As you see, his first one shows Travion Henderson being a pick. Like he's going to have him trading back with this one. You got Jalen Milroe the second round, Elijah Roberts later in the draft, Craig Woodson at safety, Zah Frazier that addresses their corner room, doubling up at running back with Jadon Blue, Arian Smith, who would be that deep threat wide receiver. With that'd be kind of fun right there to see that speed on the field. And Jeffrey Bossa, the linebacker from Oregon, that's another need that Pittsburgh could absolutely address. And then the other one is Derek Harmon at 21 staying input, Kyle McCord as a potential backup, may not be the starter, Ollie Gordon in the stacked running back group, Zah Frazier, who had a really solid combine, was really solid corner, Craig Wilson at safety, and Arian Smith later in the draft from Georgia. So I like those mocks. And shout out to BG. That's really knowledgeable news from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So outstanding job. I like that mock. I totally like that mock. But that's the Steelers, and that concludes this show. Now, as I said, tomorrow I'll be back on with probably my boy Armand and a couple other guys. We're going to be talking about every team that's still remaining from Packer fans to the Chargers to the Chiefs to the Eagles to the Bills, all those teams. So if your team is coming up, this is going to be the show for you to tune into. There's going to be probably about 7 tomorrow, so be on the lookout for it. Of course, Wednesday is the Atlanta Falcons draft show. I get to finally talk about my Dirty Birds. We're going to be a night before the draft. I'm sure the mocks are going to all be kind of leaning towards who's going to be pick 15. And then, of course, draft night I'm on. Day 2 I'm on. So you'll see a lot of All In with Nate and a lot of All In with Nate's friends on the show. But this has been an episode of All In with Nate, picks 17 to 21. Thank you for everyone that tuned into the show. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Send your friends to tune in. I'd love to get the comments. And also, just a heads up, for this draft show night on Thursday night, you will have a chance to chime in on your team when they make their pick. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been an episode of All In with Nate. I appreciate all you that support this show. You have a great Monday night and enjoy the NBA playoffs.